How often do you see where, let's say you're walking with a buddy in the mall and your buddy runs into someone that you don't know, and your buddy and this new person, they're just talking for a long time while you're just standing there. Your friend doesn't even take the time to introduce you to the other person. And if they do introduce you, it's what I call a subpar introduction. They'll just say your name and that's it. Now, a lot of people may think, what's wrong with that? That's how I introduce people. That's not how you're supposed to introduce. You're supposed to say their name and then integrate them into the conversation. If you don't put them into the conversation, now you're actually doing more harm than good by just saying their name. Because if you just say their name, like, hey, this is Paul, and now you're making both people feel awkward, or the new person that you just met is like, oh, hey, Paul, and Paul says, hey, back. But there's no connection. There's no conversation material that you have presented. When you're making the introduction, you, in this interaction, have taken up the role as the glue guy. Therefore, be the glue guy. Glue them together. Hey, this is my friend Paul. Paul, this is Jacob. Hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but both of you guys have worked in Jabil before. Jabil is an engineering firm. So I just thought that was really random. And now these two, they have a conversation point that they can bridge off one another, and then you can strategically insert yourself in. This is how you make smart introductions. And if you're a very socially awkward person, one thing you need to understand is that you could do a lot of things wrong, but if you can listen appropriately and make someone money, you're doing a lot of things right. People will completely overlook how awkward you are if you can listen appropriately and you make people money. And guess what? When you introduce people by listening effectively, you suddenly become very high social value in their eyes. One of my former clients, he is a very, very, very smart man, very introverted. So at first glance, if you're meeting him for the first time, you would think that he's a little awkward, socially awkward at least. But here's the unique thing with him. He's a boss. He has a lot of employees that work for him, and he's one of the head honchos within his market. After me and him were done with our sessions, I said, all right, my friend, I wish you the best and take care. Oh, by the way, if you ever have any referrals that you believe can improve their communication skills in front of the camera, in front of an audience, feel free to refer me. And this guy just nods his head like, I feel like he didn't even listen to me. A couple of months goes on by, 2 months. And then I get an email, and it's an email from my former client, and it's tagging someone else. And my former client is like, hey, so Armani is the guy that I've been telling you about. He's the guy that gave me so much confidence to speak in front of the camera. I feel like you two can work well together. This is what I call a beautiful introduction. Because what happens is that he already hyped me up. This is what I call the introduction before the introduction. So he was hyping me up behind the scenes in whatever, like a networking event or something. And then he made the introduction to me. So I'm talking to this new guy, this new referral. And normally it takes me roughly 3 to 4 calls to close someone because my packages are more expensive. But for this guy, I was able to close him in one interaction. That's simply because my former client gave me a beautiful introduction. So just like that, I viewed this guy, my former client, as charismatic at this point. He's no longer socially awkward. He's charismatic because he listened appropriately to the services that I offer, and he just made me money. It doesn't matter if you're socially awkward. You gotta listen appropriately, and you gotta refer people the correct way. Referring people is a lot like recommending a book to someone. If you're recommending a book to someone, and you're like, hey, you should definitely read this book, and they ask you why, and you say, I don't know, it's because I like the book. Do you think this other person is going to read the book? No, it's because they don't know what's in it for them. But if you say, hey, bro, I believe you should read this book because you're starting a business and you said one thing you were struggling with right now was content marketing, right? Well, this book, it discusses content marketing to the T. Here you go. Just like that, you have done something that's favorable for this person because it deals with their life. Same thing with introductions. If you're like, hey, Jacob, I believe you should meet Mike. And Jacob's like, why? You're like, I don't know. It's because I like Mike. Jacob's going to be like, what the heck? I'm busy. I don't have time for that. But if you say, hey, Jacob, you were having car troubles recently, right? Well, Mike, he just fixed my car recently. How about you have a conversation with him? And you don't just leave it at that. You create a group chat or a group email and you introduce both parties. This is how you become a great connector. If you want to read a good book on this, I believe it's called The Power Connector. And I believe the author's name is Judy Robonnet. Don't quote me on the author's name, but I know the book's name is The Power Connector. And it just teaches you that you could provide so much value to people by just knowing people, listening to them, and then referring them to one another. And you are becoming this power connector, the guy that knows how to make amazing introductions.